if there's a way that the information can be shared with other people. And so MCAT is here recording the whole meeting. If you call 542-MCAT and request a DVD, they'll get it to you, okay? Does that help?
We need to share this with everybody in our community.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, 542-MCAT. I'm going to hand it over to the chair.
Good evening. This is a special presentation of the Planning Board. It's a presentation of the Planning Board, but it's also a presentation to the Planning Board because we're looking for information as much as you. So I'll get to that in a minute. Being an official meeting, we have to go through a few little formalities here. So this officially calls to order the Missoula Consolidated Planning Board for August 22nd. Can we have a roll call, please? Do we have anybody that's doing a roll call?
If this works. There.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Dick Ainsworth?
Here.
John DeBari?
Here.
Heidi Kendall?
Here.
Oh. Pat Little?
Here.
Jennifer Long?
Here.
Tim Ivey? Don MacArthur? John Newman? Jerry O'Connell?
Here.
Carol Evans?
Here.
Tim Skopka?
Here.
So since it's a county issue, I believe the county alternate will sit on the board tonight, and I think John Newman is planning on being here late. So I don't know if the city alternate sits temporarily or what.
Well, since we're not taking any votes or anything, it doesn't really matter. But, okay, great, thank you. We normally approve minutes. We have no minutes to approve, so we'll skip that. Now is a point where we offer anybody in the public that has something to say that is of a topic other than what we're discussing tonight. Now is your chance to step up to the podium and speak. I assume everybody's here is for the reason we're here, so will we have somebody that wants to speak? Okay.
I'm not sure what maybe I am talking about the subject at hand, so.
Well, yeah, we'll have, if you're talking about the subject at hand, you're going to have two opportunities
Okay.
during the evening for the public to participate. So this would be like if you had a problem with parking or ADUs. We don't have a problem with ADUs, but that's for, we aren't going to talk about that. Okay, fine. We have no staff comments, we can skip that. There is no, technically, public hearings, so we'll skip that. And we'll move on to the subject at hand, which is a special presentation. And let me just give you a little overview of what's going to be happening. The special hearing tonight is to begin discussing the idea of creating a formal policy addressing the protection of agricultural lands during the subdivision process. The issue of ag land being converted for residential development has been with us for quite a while. Many of the existing subdivisions outside the city, and some inside the city, have in some fashion taken ag land out of production. And each time, proponents and opponents have argued their cases before the commissioners. The problem isn't going away, and unfortunately, there are no policies in place to guide the developers, ranchers, farmers, and the agencies in this planning process and in their planning decisions. To this end, the commissioners have asked the Open Land Citizen Advisory Committee, which is also known as the OLC, to investigate what options are available and being used elsewhere throughout our region to address this issue. OLC has had many meetings throughout the county, and after much effort has recently completed their work. The next step is for us, the planning board, to digest their work and ultimately offer our recommendations to the commissioners. I think I speak for all the board members in saying that we have a lot to learn on this subject before we can form any opinion or any recommendations on this subject. To that end, we've asked it for tonight's meeting so that we can hear not only from OLC, but from several other organizations representing both sides of this topic. And we've also asked for the University of Montana's Land Use Law Clinic to brief us on the legal issues that surround agricultural protection. Understand that this is just the first meeting of what could be many more. It's not the end. You'll all have plenty of opportunity to participate in the process as it evolves. Tonight is primarily intended for the public as well as the planning board to hear from each of these groups so that we can get a better understanding of the issues. The format for tonight's meeting is going to be a little different than our usual planning board meetings. I'm going to be turning the proceedings over to Ginny Tribe, who is a professional facilitator, and she's going to manage the presentations over the next several hours. So, with no further ado, I'm going to introduce Ginny Tribe and turn the discussion over to her. Ginny?
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to try not to use the mic, if that's okay. I don't work for the county, I work for myself. I've had my company 24 years. I work with all kinds of organizations. Last night I was in Ennis working with a group that's trying to develop some recreation management rules for the Madison River. So, and the day before that, I was working in Browning. And this afternoon, I was working at St. Pat's Hospital. So I just want you to know, I am not an expert in this process, and I am not an expert in that content. I'm a Montana native. I grew up in Billings. My dad was a bitter rooter. And some of you could clap for that, and some of you not. So however you want to deal with that. So I am here for one reason, and that's only so that we can have as many people be able to speak tonight as we can within the time frame, but also that the planning board has an opportunity to hear you, but also to hear those formal presentations, those four that Jerry just talked about. And so I'm pretty old. I have 7 kids, and I'm as close to 70 as most of the people in the room, right, Chuck? So I'm going to say that I'm going to ask you to honor the following ground rules. This is a serious topic, and there are people in the room who feel a whole bunch of different ways about it. And it's something that can affect people's personal lives as well as their societal values. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to be polite to each other when we're speaking. So as the public comment occurs, I'm going to ask you first of all, if you have a comment, we're going to take an hour of comments before the presentations. We're going to take a half hour of comments after the presentations. And there's also a form that was put together so that if you don't feel like commenting, you can write your comments down and hand it in at the end of the meeting. The staff will take all of these comments. You'll be on record because MCAT is recording it, whoever speaks. And the staff will take those comments and turn them into a summary so the planning board doesn't forget about them, as well as the information that they're hearing from these 4 presentations. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, if you would honor the fact that we've got a lot of people in the room, and even if you have a longer set of comments that you've written out, I'm going to ask you if you try to limit your comments to like 2 or 3 minutes. I know that's tough, but if you would look around at your neighbors who want to speak as well, that's the first thing I'm going to ask. The second thing I'm going to ask is that as you are speaking, you try to think about how we can best hear you. And so rudeness and anger is hard to hear. So we want to hear your comments in as specific a way as you can say them. And we'd like you to think about things like, what am I really worried about here if these guys develop a policy? What do I want to make sure, what am I going to make sure that they pay attention to? So you may have written some other comments, and we're happy to have them, but I'd really like you to think about that if you come up here. We've got people with traveling mics. I think the worst thing in the world is to have to come up here and stand in front of a bunch of people and speak. So you can speak from where you are, and we'll deliver the microphone, okay? So if you happen to be going past 3 minutes by very much, well, if you see me kind of walking toward you, that kind of means maybe you ought to think you got to run, right? All good, thank you, that's good. You might want to think about that there are other people who need to speak as well. So are you okay? These people up here don't get paid any money. These people are volunteers. They may have all kinds of ilk in terms of their philosophy, but as citizens, I'm going to ask you to respect the fact that they donate their time and they do hard work for the county, whether you agree with them or not. So are you okay? You're willing to do this? All right, so, sir?
With the public comment before the presentation, if there's comments about the presentation, half hour is probably not long enough.
And that's why we put the response form together as well, so that people could think about the presentations a little bit and write it down or speak afterwards. I'm yours till midnight. I'm hoping we're finished by 9:30. Okay. You all right? Okay. So here are our objectives. We want to hear the presentations from organizations who have prepared formal reports related to the state of agriculture and protection in Missoula County and the role of the planning board. So they're not just going to hear about what those groups think they should do. They're also going to hear some stuff about legally what kind of responsibility do they have? What kind of parameters do they operate in? Second, we want to provide as many of you as possible, and if you don't speak, use the form, with an opportunity to address the planning board concerning tonight's topic and add to the information that they need to have. And third, we want to explain the next steps in the process. So after you speak and after the presentations occur, there will be a Q&A between the planning board and the presenters. Not all the people that are hooked to the presenters, just the presenters. We don't, unless we did a full Saturday or Sunday meeting, we don't have time for everybody to interact with those presenters. So this planning meeting is about the board being able to ask the questions they need to be very clear about what's presented. When that is finished, they're going to decide what they're going to do next. And we're going to ask them to affirm, maybe the staff listens to this stuff and comes back the next meeting with some additional stuff to think about. Then we will do the second public comment period. Okay? All right. Then would we have the first person who would like to speak? And you know, he stood up and tried to do it before, so I'm going to let him go. Okay, here comes your mic.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Brian Miller. I'm a resident of Missoula County, and I have a business in Missoula County. But I grew up in a small town in Orange County, California, where we go out, hunt in the orange orchard anytime we wanted, rural country. In 1954, I went into the Army and came back 3 years later. Was astounded to see a majority of the orchard replaced with houses, stores, and pavement. The loss of agricultural lands has been so fast and so great in some areas that the counties, the state of California, Colorado, and Vermont have enacted agriculture conservation programs. The California 5th District Court of Appeal affirmed the legality of a Stanislaus County Farmland mitigation program that requires developers to permanently preserve farmland equal to that developed. The opinion also noted that the agricultural land is a finite, irreplaceable resource, and once developed, is permanently lost. When farmlands are lost, it creates a ripple effect on local businesses, particularly when the local economy is based upon agriculture. If we lose our agricultural lands and depend upon other countries for our food and fiber, we lose control of our own lives, and we also have lost what it really means to be free. In closing, I'd like to pass on to you a thought told to me by one of my professors 40 years ago. The downfall of our country will be the same as that of the Roman Empire. They built upon all of their farmlands and could not feed their soldiers or their people.
Thank you. Would you mind saying your name? I forgot to ask people to do that.
I thought I did. Brian Miller.
Thank you, Brian. Turn it in. Thank you. You were next. I'm sorry, Bill. You was ahead.
Good evening. Thanks for this opportunity to speak to you. I'm Willis Curdy. My wife and I live at 11280 Kona Ranch Road here in Missoula County. We have lived at this address for 30 years and have been a resident of Missoula County for 45 years. I also farm with my family in the Bitterroot, where I was born and raised. And to Ginny, let's hear it for Bitterrooters, okay? Okay. Our family has owned the farm for approximately 65 years. We have milk cows, operated a cow-calf operation, and we currently raise horse hay, barley, malting barley, oats, and wheat. Our Missoula small farm has raised cows, horses, and hay. Like many of us in this room, I understand what agriculture means to our family and the people we grow food to feed. Missoula County must undertake a process to preserve the ag land still in production today. This farmland will help feed us and our livestock for this year, next year, and for generations to come. Unfortunately, we only think of the here and now. But what we do today will affect our generations to come. Where will our grandchildren and their grandchildren grow their food if we allow the land which produces our food today to become a parking lot or a subdivision? Missoula County farmland has one tremendous advantage to the majority of Montana and to the western U.S. To paraphrase Norman McLean, we have a river running through it. This river provides irrigation to thousands of acres of some of the best farmland found in the United States. If properly cultivated and irrigated, these farms will produce a tremendous amount of food. Even in short snowpack years, we usually have sufficient amounts of water to grow our crops. This is in comparison to the Midwestern U.S., which is at the mercy of what falls from the sky. This summer is a great example of the advantage we have over other crop growing areas. Preserving ag land will not be easy. Missoula County leaders need to use creative means to generate resources to help current farmers conserve the land and to find a way to put it into open space program while providing the landowners fair market compensation for the easement or outright purchase. The land is still open to make this happen. However, we must act. The current proposals are a great step in making this happen. All parties who need to use our land for a variety of uses must work together to find a place for people to live, but also to work together to preserve what is critically important to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take Bill because he stood up next, and I'm coming over to this side. Honestly, there are people in this room that I hug, but it's only because I've known them a long time. So I'm not trying to take sides. So Bill, you're up.
I'm Jim Brown, representing Five Valleys Audubon Society. Audubon is very interested and very concerned about birds and other wildlife, as you know, but we're also very concerned about what happens to our agricultural lands, because agricultural lands are very important to the wildlife that we have enjoying the valley. Then, as you know too, I think, the agricultural lands and the wildlife habitats in the valley, the prime wildlife habitats, are very limited commodity. There's two important reasons why agriculture is important to wildlife. One is that some habitats, like the grasslands, some croplands, provide very important habitat for a number of species. And the other reason is that these agricultural lands are a buffer, a non-disturbance buffer to very important prime wetland and riparian area habitats. And without that buffer, the value of these habitats would be greatly diminished. Let me give you a couple examples quickly. One is the Swainson's hawk. It's a bird that's a National Audubon watch list species. There are 6 nests currently in this valley. A few years ago, there was something like 10. It's a grassland species. The good news is it gets along well with people, but it must have grasslands where it can forage for voles and other life in those agricultural lands. The nocturnal counterpart is the long-eared owl. You don't see that because it flies around at night, but it also must have grasslands to find all these voles. On the other side, the defense of or non-disturbance would be waterfowl. There's a number of species of waterfowl that are fairly sensitive, and if you don't have a pretty good buffer between where they occur in the wetlands, they're too nervous to nest. Our grasslands also support some very important grassland species, such as the vesper sparrow and the state bird, the western meadowlark. And without the grasslands, we would lose those species. So in short, We're very much concerned about what happens to our agricultural lands, and we think that the time is very appropriate that we take planning action to be sure that future generations can benefit and enjoy both of these resources. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Please. Do you have the mic, Vince?
I don't know if I really need the mic, but. Okay, make sure everybody hears me. My name's Andy Hayes, and I was born here in the St. Pat's Hospital in 1952 and have lived in the Missoula Valley all my life. I've always lived in a rural setting, and I have a really strong connection with the land, both for agriculture and for recreational reasons. I've seen the development of Missoula County and western Montana with both excitement and great concern. I've read the documents that are going to be discussed tonight, which I think is an important starting point in this discussion, including all the potential ag policies. Missoula County was presented from the Open Lands Committee. State law already mandates that local government consider the impact a subdivision might have on agriculture when they review a proposed subdivision. In the last 40 years, we've seen a loss of around 40% of our agricultural lands in Missoula County, 21% in the last 20 years. What's going to happen in the next 40 years? I'm to that age, I'm starting to think, what is going to happen? What are we going to leave to our future generations? We need incentives for agricultural businesses to be able to continue and to not feel a need to subdivide their agricultural lands. Many incentives were proposed in the Open Lands Committee document. Subdividing and selling agricultural land is only a one-time, short-sighted, large profit venture for landowners, and the land is gone from agriculture forever. Not subdividing is a long-term, low-profit commitment to the land and our future. People move to Missoula for the open land, scenic vistas, rural lifestyle, and recreational opportunities. Let's not shoot ourselves in the foot. Support agricultural policies for the Missoula County Planning Board. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Marcia Flynn Morgenstern. In the late 1990s, the city of Missoula and Missoula County were identifying what direction Missoula was growing. The logical conclusion was that it was growing to the west. They held numerous public meetings, which we attended, and they developed what was called the Mullen Plan. This plan, modified over and over, addressed land use, traffic flow, park requirements, and all zoning issues. This was a 4-year process. A sewer, RSID 474, was assessed against approximately 120 acres of our land at $3,000 per acre. This totaled roughly $360,000. We still have over $250,000 to pay off on a sewer that we have yet to hook up to. This problem won't get paid off in my lifetime and will become our children's problem. We eventually gave in and cooperated with the promise that this sewer would allow greater density, adding value to the property to help pay for the sewer. We even gave up 17 acres for future roads and utility easements, unreimbursed for future development. Question: if this plan is apparently aimed at preserving agricultural land and it imposes requirements for developers to set aside land for agriculture, will we be reimbursed or credited for the $3,000 per acre plus the 4% interest that we have been paying on land that would be undeveloped? Another question: what happens to the tax base? Who will pay the taxes on this property? 4 homes on an acre of ground, say at $1,000, makes $4,000. Where will you make up the differences for schools, fire control, and other public services? Water. Agriculture takes water, lots of water. Water rights do not necessarily go with the property. Farming with metered water would hardly be feasible. Hellgate Valley Irrigation is a privately owned ditch. This ditch is not under the Quincy law, as there has never been any federal grants against this ditch. The DNRC says there will be no more water rights from the Clark Fork River source. You would have to buy water rights from the individual owners if they are willing to sell them. When you take this land, will it be forever? Or will the county decide to sell it off when these agricultural plots are not working? Will these lands be given back to the original heirs of the land? Or will the county or city sell them off? The state of Montana sees the need to help young people make agriculture as a career through loan guarantees, similar to SBA loans. My husband and I started our business in 1975 with a $40,000 SBA loan. Since then, we have provided numerous jobs and have spent millions of dollars in employment, goods, and services in Missoula County. If you want to promote agriculture, this approach makes more sense than taking property from farmer without a farmer. Thank you.
Sir.
My name is Mark Brady. I'm the Republican candidate for the Missoula County Commissioner this election year. I don't have a prepared comment, but there are two things that I would really want the planning board to request in their decision-making before they make a decision when it comes down to it. The first one is the question that I think has to be answered is, how much of the agricultural land in Missoula County has been used in the past? What's the history of it for human consumption? Or are we talking about feed for the animals? Those are two separate things that I think the planning board needs to consider and take into account when they go and make a decision. The second one goes along with this. What is the cost going to be for the land that is still going to be developed? Common logic tells me that if you take some land away from the total that's there, you don't make any more land. So will that increase? Will that artificially increase other land that people are going to try to build houses on? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a woman in the back here who has a dog that has to go home pretty soon because it's an elderly dog, so that, the woman's elderly, the dog's okay.
Hi, my name is Sally Brown, and I've lived in this area long enough to remember that when you came over the viaduct on Reserve, what you saw was all undeveloped land. And I'm kind of shocked every time I go outside of my neighborhood and see all the development. But that said, I'm also here to represent the Montana Sustainable Growers Union, and it's a group of about 27 what would be called small farmers in the greater Missoula area. And we would like you to reserve agricultural land for farmers. That's a given. I'll take it one step further and ask that you add into your group farmers of all different sorts. There's lots of different kinds of farming, and people are using the word farming in this room pretty loosely. So invite a variety of farmers into the discussion. Find the land that is farmable by a farmer of some sort and proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. I had another, you're welcome, Sally. I had another, you were next. And I'm going to move over to the other side. Please don't think I'm trying to get contest.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aaron Scott. I am not a native. I am a recent immigrant in the last couple of years. And I am the owner and operator of Scott Solar. And I was in civil engineering and surveying for 20 plus years, and it was my job to develop. Trust me, I've done a lot of subdivisions. But in my travels, I've started to see some things, and in my life, I've started to change my perspective on things. At one time, I thought growth at whatever cost was the best way to go. I've changed significantly in the last few years, and what I'm seeing within the way the world's working, we are going to have to change significantly in the way we view things. So my request to you, as a board, and those who are going to represent us, Chuck and the other gentleman here and others, that those that are going to make the decisions be willing to look at other communities around the world that have found ways to successfully manage both development and growth with agriculture. And where I'm going with this is, in my travels, I've had the pleasure of living in Napa, California. Those of you who know, Napa is wine country, and several years back, because they felt they were so special and that the ambiance of what they had was worth preserving, they took some pretty drastic steps in the amount of development that they allowed. They limited the number of subdivisions they could have significantly. Couldn't go below a certain acreage. They pretty much put a halt to it. But it didn't stop growth. And they took, through the city, some totally new visions about how to bring growth back in and rebuild what they have. And for all the places that I've lived, it was one of the most beautiful cities that I've ever been able to walk downtown. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. There are new ways of thinking. There are new processes that are taking place around the globe to comprehend that we do need a more sustainable way of living, that we just can't be trucking in our stuff the way that we have, because it's not working. And we can still have development, but how do we do that? I beg of you to wipe away all the ideas you have and potentially create all new ones for what we need for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barbara Howell. Couple things. I've been third generation on the same ranch. My husband and I have 120 acres out on Mullen Road. Something that Willis said that is pretty crazy, and maybe we are lucky in the fact that we have water, but we do not have adequate water to water our fields right now. According to what we're supposed to be getting out of the irrigation ditch, the Frenchtown irrigation ditch, it's like 4 times what our pump will handle, and right now we can't water our crops. I'm not against keeping ag land, but I feel that the board needs to look at ways to make it so that we can keep it ag land. There's like no profit margin now hardly for the farmer, and things that are coming through the county, if you will, are trying to get done. It's a 2% tax county-wide on gas. Who's that going to hurt the most? Sure, that we're going to get some tourist dollars out of it, but it's going to hurt the farmer a lot. We can't get water. We have 4 lines that we should be running to try to produce enough hay to feed our animals. We're lucky if we can run 2 lines right now. So tell me, who's going to buy me 100 ton of hay to feed my animals this year? I don't think the people in the city are going to cash in their 401ks to help me feed my animals. So there went my profit for the year if we can't put up enough hay. Something else that the county does on a regular basis is, in one of the times when we changed some of the boundaries on our property, they made almost 15 acres riparian area. We still have to pay taxes on that land, but we can't do anything with it. So I'm all about the birds and the wildlife and stuff like that, because we have them all. But to tell me I have to pay taxes on land that I can't use, that's kind of crazy. Then I've been to several of the other meetings about open and resource, how they want, if we sell part of our land, I've seen the presentation, it was given at one of the other meetings. If we sell, let's say, half of our land, of our 120 acres, we have to set aside half of it. Isn't that like stealing our land? Why don't the county then buy it? If they want to keep that other 60 acres or whatever, let them buy it. It's the same fair market value that I've just sold the other 60 acres for, instead of telling me that I have to give up my land. Because let's face it, that 120 acres is our retirement. It's like the people that live in the cities that have the 401ks or the savings accounts or the pensions, that's all well and good, but then like put up, if you want the open land and the ag land, then why don't you contribute to the farm or the people that have it? One other thing real quick is what the lady back there said about farming. There's all kinds of different farming. I'm also president of the Missoula Horsemen's Council, and we manage the Missoula Equestrian Park, which is a 90-acre facility over behind Community Medical Center at Big Sky High School. There's gardens over there that nobody will take up and plant vegetables. They're empty, and they're for anybody that wants to plant a garden, and we can't find somebody to fill that need. So people really don't want to work as hard as it takes the ag land to work.
So I think you're going to get names here tonight for gardens. Okay.
Yeah. Contact Bill's office. Okay, thank you.
Jenny, I got her first. You want to, yeah, go ahead, and then I'm coming over here.
I'll make it short. My name is Orrin Johnson, and decades ago I was an undergraduate here at the University of Montana. Moved out of state for job opportunities, and one place that I lived for 3 years was Riverside, California, and they didn't have enough visionaries on their planning board, I guess, to protect the orange groves, and they virtually lost all of their orange groves. One of the things that brought me back to Missoula is the agriculture and the open space, so I just hope there's visionaries on the planning board to protect the local agriculture.
Thank you. Hi, next person.
Hi. Hello. My name is Lindsay Warshaw, and I live just outside of town here. And I am a young farmer, and I'm here to tell you that I'm one of many, many young farmers who wants to grow food for my community and make a sustainable, productive, profitable business by growing food for my community. And I just want to respond that you can't find farmers. I think that's a communication problem more than it is a lack of youthful energy and ability and capability and excitement around farming. And so I'm here to tell you that agriculture is not dying, and there's a lot of young energy around it. And I think that processes like this are really great, and laws that we have and legislators, it's about planning for our future, and future that we want to live in. And I know that I want to live in a place that values agriculture and that provides for opportunities for young people to create and run sustainable farm businesses. And I truly believe that we can do that here. And I think that having policies in place is necessary to ensure that these opportunities remain for our county. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for holding this hearing. Thank you for your service to the community. My name is Daniel Kemmis. I grew up on a farm in eastern Montana, but I've lived here in Missoula for 40 years now. Served some time in the Montana legislature and actually had a hand in the subdivision law when it included the requirement that you look at agricultural land. I also served in City Hall as mayor of Missoula for several years. I mention that service not because it gives me any kind of expertise here, but because I know how difficult and complex your challenge is. And I'm assuming that whatever you come up with will not be an either-or choice, either conserve ag land or develop. I think one of the great things about Missoula is that we've learned to use common sense and find the highest common ground, and I trust you'll do that in this case. It's actually my current service in public life that I want to speak from very briefly, and that is I am now a proud member of the Missoula Farmers Market Board. And I've been a longtime supporter and patron of farmers markets, but I am astonished at the growth in farmers markets. I just looked at some data from the USDA that shows that in 1994 there were 1,755 farmers markets across the country. Today there are 7,800, an almost five-fold increase. And what that speaks to, of course, is the steady increase in interest in local food production and local food consumption. There is nothing more important that I can discern in terms of the economic vitality in Missoula than the quality of life here. And increasingly, the capacity to grow and consume food locally is an absolutely key component of quality of life. So as we look at the small amount of agricultural land in Missoula County and the growing demand for local food production, I think that that gives you part of what it is that you need to consider as you put forward a wise plan for conservation. Thank you.
Anybody spoken from the middle here? I don't want to. I didn't mean to imply you were in the middle.
Oh, well, I'm from North Dakota, so you know. So on that note, at the risk of inciting an onslaught of North Dakota jokes, just write them down and tell them to me afterwards, because I can take it, I really can. So I'm going to start with a story that starts in North Dakota. I know, don't be scared. What? Oh, hi, who am I? I'm Winona Bateman, but originally Winona Sorensen. And my great-great-grandparents homesteaded on the Knife River in North Dakota in the late 1800s. Don't worry, I'm not going to go year by year. I grew up with my grandparents, and I absorbed my grandfather's stories about growing up on their homestead and the values that he and my grandmother developed during the Great Depression and World War II. Values shaped by scarcity, economic insecurity, sound familiar? And balancing individual freedoms with community need. A balancing act that helped their communities survive the rough times and led it to prosperity after the war. Their stories and values burned the importance of self-reliance into my mind. Grow your own food, hunt your own meat, put it up, cure it, share it, trade it, sell it. But most importantly, have it. Always squirrel it away to be able to feed yourself, your neighbors. Have enough to trade for what you don't have and enough to sell to get money to provide for other needs. Producing food as a serious gardener or as a commodities farmer meant security for individual families and the community. Food producers contributed to the local economy, provided local jobs, and because of shared sensibilities, the community was prepared for unexpected shortages based on unforeseen circumstances, and they were prepared to take advantage of new markets. My grandfather believed that there were all kinds of ways of making money, but in the end, the only way to feed yourself was to have access to food and the land to grow it. Plus, he always added, everybody's got to eat. We all have to eat. So do we as a community want to be able to maintain our ability to grow our own food, the ability to develop this part of our economy, engage with this aspect of our heritage? Do we want to be ready to feed regional need and demand for local food, as Dan talked about, when it is called upon? And how can we support landowners and farmers? It's a really important piece of this question. When it comes to self-reliance, I would put food in the same category as energy. It's a precious resource that we need to be able to produce close to home. But producing food is dependent on the good stewardship and the availability of farmland. Having some sort of mitigation policy for the development of farmland seems like it could help us strike a great balance between individual rights and community needs. In the end, you absolutely cannot live without money, and you have to support yourself. And landowners should absolutely be able to develop their land. But you can't eat money either. Really, you can't eat a dollar bill. So, isn't it prudent for us to plan together as a community to grow both? Let's work together.
Are you with her?
Yeah, but I have a different perspective.
Well, I don't think we can't do that kind of work here.
I'm Colbert Howell, and I am married to Barbara Nielsen, she was. And I was fortunate enough to get to know her father for 3 years before he died. And you can assure that I was educated in the Montana way of life since I was taking his daughter. But anyway, I come from Raleigh, North Carolina. Lived there, we won't discuss how many years, but I have lived here full-time since 1997. I also am her slave because I maintain the ranch, do all the repairs, keep the equipment running, and raise 300 ton of hay to feed about 65 to 70 horses that we board in order to make some money to eat with, to buy food with, because she's not a gardener and I'm not. So we have to buy our food. But anyway, to make a long story short, what we have here tonight would not be if this county had a strong, comprehensive plan. In 1996, Barbie and I decided, when her father was still living, that we wanted to live on the ranch. And they moved from she lived in North Carolina with me for 4 years before she decided it was a better place to come back here to live. So I agreed to come, but even her dad was in agreement of developing 24 acres of it in a double and triple wide modular home park, because there was not enough land, as good as it is, as much hay as it'll raise, there was not enough land for a family to live on to survive, period. Now, suppose it was 1,600 acres rather than 157 acres. I know several of my friends in the county, in Frenchtown Valley County, that have land that's 1,000 acres. And here they're getting on up in age and they're working day and night. They've got children, and guess what? They're like my children. They don't want to farm. So what do you do with the land? Sell it? Develop it? Who are you going to get to farm it? You want to volunteer to farm it? Okay. How many in here want to farm? Raise your hand if you want to farm. Work from sun up to sundown. Your back hurts, your feet are dirty, your hands are dirty. But anyway, long story short, if we had a strong, comprehensive plan, as many other states in this country and many other counties do, there would be no question as to what land is to be used for now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Zoning. You know, remember what we said about the ground rules? Well, we're not gonna have a basketball game where we cheer for each team and all that business, so otherwise we'll just have to stop the public comments. Going great, we're hearing wonderful things and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Stan Lusher from Frenchtown, and I got a 120-acre dry land farm out there, and I wish a lot of you would come out there. I'd be very willing to sell it to you, so you can starve to death too. I retired there, and it's cost me the last 15 years over $250,000 just to keep the place going. You know, we talk about, you guys talk about your farming and your gardening and all that stuff. Yeah, I garden along with the farm every day, 7 days a week, just to try to keep my head up above water. But I do leave here in the wintertime and go down south. And I live in a farming community down there. Now, when they raise alfalfa, they get 9 to 10 crops a year. You get 3. They have 5 different crops that they get down there, from lettuce, corn, cotton, and all the other different vegetables that they can raise down there. Now, they don't have a problem with subdivisions moving in because they make too much money off the land. we get very little money up here off the land. And most of the successful farmers have second jobs. Some are construction people, some have backhoe business off to the side and different things like that. That's the only way they can put food on the table and pay the taxes. And if you people want to farm, start out buying a tractor there just to get by for $40,000 or $50,000 that you don't use that much. Now, if you have to put a wheat crop in, you can get one for $100,000 or maybe $150,000. And your return on that, let's see, my place out there has returned the last few years 20 bushel an acre, roughly about $6 to the acre. Diesel fuel's $4. You people figure it out. My place is for sale. I want to retire. I'm 75 plus and I'm tired of working.
Amen.
And let some of the rest of you young people think you can do it, do it. And one last thing I would like to ask is before we start, I'm curious about the board. I'd like to know if any of you are property owners, farms, or anything like that, you know, if the rest of you live in town, and kind of give us a little idea of who you are, because I don't have any idea what you are, what you represent, whether you belong to some kind of a land thing, or if you're environmentalists, or who you are, you know, that's what I would like to know. Because, you know, we might be fighting an uphill battle here. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, thank you.
Name is Jeff Wilson. I grew up in a ranch between Thompson Falls and Trot Creek. It's been sold because of drought. We had water that had been there for 120 years by record, and we have had 4 years last 8 or 10 that it was gone. Talking, as Dan Luce was just talking about the economics of scale and how we survive in western Montana against more productive parts of the country, which is the Midwest, which is getting, the biggest fear of my life is it getting droughted, and it's happening this year. And the whole dynamics of our food supply in America, we'll find out what's going to happen, but right now, we'll see, but it's not anything else that was ever forecast. Mr. Brady, a couple of just rough numbers. Here in America, 1.5% of the people feed 100% of America. We have about 1/32 of the planet can be cultivated. Another 1/32 can be harvested by our ungulates, sheep, cattle, goats. And as we sit and address the big picture here, what we're going to do here in our little micromanaged Missoula County, Montana, western Montana, against, as has been pointed out, our lack of competitiveness on an economics of scale basis because of freight and because of volume of land. And we're in a small valley, relatively speaking. But at the same time, we have quality, we have potential and abilities to produce things up to a point. And I guess, and having been to these meetings before, one concept I think has as much validity as any is a cul-de-sac approach and leaving some of the open space, but also we need to consider back to, you're not going to hoe 20 acres. We need to have and realize the economics of scale using our equipment. And I've had the privilege in my lifetime of seeing the big square balers instead of ED cubes. We used to put up over 20,000 of those a year. Center pivots. I've changed up height, my feet kill me. And front wheel assist in our tractors. I mean, we've seen some beautiful technological advantages that we're starting to appreciate, but in our approach with this smaller scale that we're here in Missoula, and like Dan's pointing out, this equipment is just scary. But you need it, just to compete. I mean, you're not going to hoe and keep up with the tractors. And again, with our approach, the open space, etc., consider the key economics of scale. I guess that's the best thought I can have addressing this right now, because we're up against maybe the first time in a couple of generations some food shortages. I mean, this is something that hasn't happened for a couple of generations.
Thank you very much. I'm moving back over here. I have a man right here.
Hi, my name is Niles Bresh, and I'm the Republican candidate for Senate District 50, which covers Lolo and a good chunk of western Missoula County. But I'm also a property owner down there in Lolo. I own less than a half acre, or actually I own less than a half acre of land. which doesn't qualify for conservation easements that are going to be used to quote-unquote preserve ag land here in Montana. My concern is that I took real estate and have a paralegal degree from the COT and currently pursuing a public law degree from the University of Montana. Now, when you sell real estate, you're also selling a bundle of rights. These conservation easements take the development portion of that bundle of rights. But I did some research on this. It's not just that. The way the IRS describes its conservation easements is that anything that's not specifically given to the, or retained in that document by the property owner is lost to whoever gets the conservation easement, which means that somebody else is going to dictate what you do with your own property. And of course, there's all sorts of tax incentives to do this. Now, when you provide tax incentives, you're decreasing the amount of revenue and you're lowering the tax base. That tax base is used to pay for schools. I know because I have over 37 taxes and fees on my property every single year, but I don't qualify for conservation easement. So the end result is that my property become more valuable as I retain all my property rights. My taxes go up and up and up. Where do we draw the line at before people are being taxed out of their homes left and right? There's another issue with the conservation easements that about 300 people in Colorado found out the hard way. After they'd done all their appraisals, talked to lawyers, got the conservation easement, their property value dropped on the open market. IRS came back and said that their appraisers overvalued their property and then went after them for not paying enough in taxes. And if you can't pay the IRS, what they'll do is they'll put a federal tax lien on your home, and if you still can't pay it, they'll auction your home or your property off. There's a lot of unintended consequences and a lot of unanswered questions as far as how removing these lands from the tax base is going to affect how we fund our schools, how we fund our roads, and how we pay for all the other programs that we rely on here in Montana. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bob Zimmerino, longtime resident of Missoula. I had a restaurant here for 25 years in downtown Missoula, and we served as much Montana food as we possibly could. We got local produce from Lifeline Produce from the day they opened. As soon as they started providing, we started buying it, and I would say that the same was true of our meat suppliers, one from Great Falls, one from Kalispell, one from Ronan. We did everything we could to keep money in the state and to do well by Montana, because Montana's always done well by me. And I will tell you that I love living here. I see two issues at stake here. One of them is the quality of life, and the other one is the quality of life. But one falls under the term of space, and the other falls under the term of money. Not everybody wants to be a farmer. Not everybody wants to have that open space. Some people want fancy cars, nice place to live, megaplexes, Reserve Street, all of that. That's fair because it's a city. What we're talking about, everybody's talking about growing. How about growing a city? We are growing a city here, and we are trying to do it, I would assume, in the most responsible fashion. That means that there's room for everybody. There's room for everybody, and if you look around, it's Montana, for God's sakes. There's fewer than 1 million people. I was in Rochester, New York, in an area that had more people than the state of Montana. I don't see how we could miss the mark on this. If we take our time, if we look at it, if we find agriculture is sustainable to this many dollars and this is what we can make available for that, we also have, we also have to have the same responsibility in our growth toward building the city. People are coming. People are coming. This is a great place to live. I came here 37 years ago, the first time I ever felt like I was at home. And I will die here unless I'm on vacation.
I'm going to go back there and pick some people in the back. We haven't gotten back there yet.
Well, I'm Vicki Watson. I'm a 30-year resident of Missoula, and I really want to thank the Planning Board for your public service in addressing such a critical issue as protecting farmland. I grew up in the 1950s on a 150-acre family farm in the Texas Blackland Prairie, surrounded by other family farms, so the richest farmland in the world, and we grew that county grew all the food that it ate. But now almost all that rich farmland has disappeared under Walmarts and distribution centers and airports and subdivisions, and now almost all the food consumed in that county is brought in from outside. And the children of the farmers have scattered to the winds, unable to compete with the other land uses to buy the land. So there has to be a better way than that. A secure future for our community, our nation, our world, as we all know, depends on preserving good farmland. And that won't happen without taking decisive action to work together as a community to protect the land and provide fair compensation to those who wish to sell their land. So we have to plan for higher density in housing on land that's not as suitable for agriculture, minimize roads with a really efficient transportation system, and develop funding for open space and farmland purchase. In some areas of the country, tax incentives and subsidies are provided to farmers to keep farmland as farmland. And as a Missoula taxpayer, I want to say I'm willing to pay more in taxes to purchase farmland and assist farmers with their economic challenges. I consider the services they provide us as essential as police and fire protection and sewage treatment and so on and so forth. I think we urban citizens do need to cough up more money to make farming more viable and accessible to the young people who are ready to step in and replace these farmers who have worked so hard for so long. Thanks.
My name is Fred Stewart. I live on the end of South Avenue here in Missoula. Our parcel is 6.5 acres. About half of it is riparian area, can't be developed. A little over an acre is where the house sits with the lawn. The other 2.5 acres is going into an apple orchard. So do I qualify as a farmer, a wannabe farmer, a hobby farmer? I'm not sure, but when that 2 acres is in production, it would generate approximately 20,000 pounds of apples. So that's 20,000 pounds. It doesn't have to come from someplace else, but it's certainly not enough to generate income to sustain me. I'm hoping it'll pay the taxes, pay the expenses, and have a little bit left over. But it wouldn't provide a livelihood for me. I think a couple of things are clear in terms of what we need. One of them is a clearinghouse so people who want to do small-scale agriculture can connect with the people who have the land available. There's been comments on that already. Another area that we need work on is being able to transfer development rights. I don't know of any way for landowners who have good agricultural land to be able to keep that land and not develop it unless they have the ability to transfer the development rights to another area, like Vicki just mentioned, having the less productive areas in higher density development. Well, one way that can happen is by being able to transfer the development rights. So there are a number of areas that I think can be very helpful to keep the land in production so that indeed we don't have to develop every single inch of our prime ag land. Thank you.
Thanks, Fred. Would you give that back to Karen? I'm going to take this and then I'm going to go over, I'm going to hit over there. It's 7:09 and 7:19 is when we started. So at 7:19, I'm going to honor the presenters that are coming, that came to do that tonight, so we have 10 minutes left.
Thank you. My name's Larry Anderson. I was a county commissioner for a while and sat in seats similar to the ones up there and listened to people, both proponents and opponents of subdivision development in Missoula County. One of the issues that was raised earlier was that there were different types of farms and different types of farming. And I guess I will address some of Fred Stewart's comments about small farms. One of the groups that was opposed to most subdivision development was the Community Food and Farm and Agricultural Coalition. And while their concerns were legitimate, I believe these concerns should be addressed based on facts rather than general comments. First question is how much farmland is needed to supply the community with locally grown fruits and vegetables? We've heard that a lot of people like to buy locally. So while historically Missoula was known as the Garden City for good reason, the number of orchards, greenhouses, and truck farms have declined dramatically. As our economy in Missoula has moved from agricultural to a more diversified and technologically based community. So how many acres are needed to meet that demand? 100, 300, several thousand? I think before subdivision is required to set aside so many acres for agricultural needs, there needs to be a study with the end goal in mind as to what the ultimate number of acres should be in Missoula to meet consumer demand for locally grown produce. So far, I don't think that has been an issue that has been addressed in a factual way. Second, what about the agricultural land that has already been set aside? Since a county-wide conservation bond was passed, there are hundreds, if not thousands of acres of existing farm, ranch, and timberland that has been set aside by their owners through conservation easements to be preserved forever as free from development. Can't some of these lands be used to produce row crops, fruits, and vegetables to supply the demands for fresh, locally grown produce once that demand is quantified? I believe this study needs to be conducted to determine how much of this land is currently in conservation easements that can be used to grow produce through lease agreements or other arrangements with the existing landowners with conservation easements on their property. Third is what type of land is suitable for growing produce. Is it irrigated cropland, irrigated pasture, or hay ground? Most of the truck farms and produce farms that I have seen on tours were less than 10 or 20 acres. And most of these small tracts require irrigation and a heavy labor component to be viable. So I think that study needs to identify specifically the types of soil required and where they are located in Missoula County. I would just like to summarize, since I see Jenny's closing in on me here, that I think there should be a requirement that if a conservation is put into place, that a certain percentage of that land be set aside for locally grown truck farmers to use. And I think that these decisions need to be made on facts, not on emotion. So I would hope that the board would consider some of these suggestions that I put forward tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I know I've neglected to decide for
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you to the Planning Board for the chance to address you this evening, and thank you to everyone who's here. My name is Brianna Ewart. I live here in Missoula, but I work up in Arlee at the Western Montana Growers Co-op, which is a farmer-owned cooperative that helps farmers distribute their products throughout Western Montana. So, and I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of myself, but also many of my friends, and we consider ourselves the next generation of farmers. I was in 4-H growing up. I primarily worked with livestock. I had hogs that we sold at the county fair, but I wasn't fortunate enough to be born to a family that owned a family farm. We leased the land where we kept our animals. So, and no one really encouraged me. No one really told me that I could be a farmer. So I went off to college. I taught elementary school and middle school for 5 years. I came back to get a master's degree. All of that to say I've realized what I want to be doing is farming. I know it's going to be an uphill battle. I have a great deal of respect for the farmers and ranchers in the room tonight who've spent their lifetime on the land. I know this isn't an easy prospect ahead of us, but my partner and I are willing to take that gamble. We think it's hard work, but good work, and we want to be serving our community, doing that good work we believe in. We actually started our own business last year. We ran a small greenhouse because we couldn't access land, so we had the space for a little greenhouse. We sold vegetable and bedding plant starts in our farmers market. We were really proud to say that we actually made a small profit in our first year of farming. Certainly wasn't enough to quit our other jobs, but it was enough to make us really proud of what we had done that first year and really excited for what there is to come. There's a lot of changes happening in agriculture right now. Like many of the other beginning farmers I know, as I already said, I'm not going to inherit a family farm. We're trying to figure out how to access land. The system's really set up now for the only real way into farming is if you are fortunate enough to inherit land and inherit that equipment because it's so expensive. There's lots of groups, Landling Montana setting up that clearinghouse, trying to help beginning farmers figure out how to access land. But I just hope that the planning board and everyone here tonight will consider the next generation of farmers and the economic opportunity that we hope to access here, making this a better place for all of us to live. So, thank you.
You know, they're probably the youngest speaker in the room who's going to speak right now.
Hello, my name is Logan Turner, and I'm in 4-H, and I want you to save eggland because I love 4-H and I raise a hog.
And nice job on the job. You're going to go?
My name is John Turner. I'm a local businessman. My brother and I run a family business that was started in 1977 in Missoula. Unfortunately, our business that we run utilizes an awful lot of asphalt. So there is absolutely no farming that can happen on the property where we sell our cars. Our family started a family farm several years ago. We work from sun up till sundown, and we love it. We also realize that we're the minority of people in this room, more than likely. Minority of the people in Missoula that want to do and want to work that hard. Our family that owns this business is willing to put our money where our mouth is. We're willing to work harder and longer. We're willing to put those conservation easements on the land that we have so that somebody in the future, whether it's our kids or somebody else's kids, have that opportunity to grow the food that we're going to eat. We realize that we could sell what we have and make an awful lot of money on the land that we have. Once the economy turns back around and we sell this property, we don't want to do that. There's more important things than money. You know, leaving the planet better than we found it is extremely important. We're trying to instill that in our children, and I commend the planning board for taking a step that people don't like. The government's taking that step to say what we can and can't do with our land. But I'm here to tell you, I'm okay with that with the property that our family owns. So thank you, and thank you for making these hard decisions.
Thank you. Remember, we're not going to do clapping for people, because then we end up with a basketball game, and then, so I have one person who's got the mic. I got 2 minutes left. We're going to start the reports after that. Remember, when they're finished with the Q&A between the reports and the presenters, there'll be another half hour of public comment. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just be really quick. My name is Amy Sillenberg. I live here in Missoula County. I also work for Montana Audubon, the state office for Audubon. And Jim already spoke from the Five Valleys perspective, the local Audubon chapter of the value of ag land, open space. We've long, as an organization, supported efforts in land use planning to protect land habitat for birds, wildlife, and for people. And I just appreciate everybody being here and the planning board at thinking wisely and to come up with a plan that's predictable so that we can have the land around. And I won't go through the birds as Jim already spoke to, but having ag land and then those buffers can really offer some ecosystem services to step out from a lot of what the individuals have said here. We need pest control, and we need to think about the connection with pollinators and how everything all fits together here. And in a changing climate where we're trying to build a resilient community, having open space and ag land is important. We also want to encourage the use of local foods because our energy costs are going to go up, climate change is happening, and we need to use less energy. So from the bigger picture, I think this is very important, and again, from the smaller picture of the farmers. Thanks for all the perspectives here.
Thank you. So thank you for all the perspectives here. I think this was a rich collection of comments. I know there were hands that I didn't get to. Please don't take it personally. We'll get as many as we can afterwards. I'm going to turn it over to Neva. She's got 15 minutes, and she just said, tell me when I have 5 left. So I will.